primer lugar, muy buenas tardes a todos. Para comenzar, me gustaría hacer una breve introducción en español acerca de la presentación de la propuesta que estamos desarrollando desde el Circular Economy Club de Guadalajara. Tal y como hemos tenido la posibilidad de haceros saber a todos, estamos trabajando en la consulta pública desarrollada desde el seno de la Comisión Europea para buscar nuevos mecanismos de ajuste a los actuales en la regulación de los mercados de carbono. Desde nuestra agrupación de Guadalajara estamos desarrollando una propuesta de carácter local que pretende ser lo más inclusiva posible con diferentes estamentos de la sociedad de Guadalajara. La propuesta final, a grandes rasgos, podría quedar de la siguiente forma, pero estamos abiertos a nuevas colaboraciones al respecto.
The definition problem about the current situation of carbon markets regulation could start defining the actual situation. The main rules, regulation and directives such as Directive 2003/87/EC, Directive EU 2018/410 are focused in the greenhouse gas emissions permits, and the definition of different control mechanisms to implement across the different stages in the development of the actuation plan to achieve the global target to reduce the greenhouse gas emission during the next 10 years. To achieve this ambitious target, the EU has created the European Union Emissions Trading Systems. The European Union Emissions Trading System is a cornerstone of the European Union's policy to combat climate change, and it's a key tool to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by an effective way. The system of emission control of the European Union is the world's first major carbon market. At this moment we are immersed in the Phase 4, 2021 to 2030, of the European project. To achieve the EU's overall greenhouse gas emissions reduction target for 2030, the sectors covered by the EU emissions trading system must reduce their emissions by 43% compared to 2005 levels. The Purpose Emission Trading System Directive will be achieved through a mix of interlinked measures such as strengthening the European Union emissions trading system for the next decade, better targeted carbon leakage rules, funding low-carbon innovation and energy sector modernization, inclusive consultant phase with different stakeholders. To be able to understand the importance of the emission trade system, we must start understanding the benefits that provide us. Economic impact and social impacts concerning the surplus of allowances on the market. The 2019 Market Stability Reserve Surplus Indicator, with 1.65 billion allowances, continues to lead to placing allowances in the reserve, reducing the 2019 auction volume by nearly 40%, with almost 400 million allowances. In 2018, a strengthened carbon price signal led to a record amount of revenues for member states from the selling of ETS allowances. The generated amount equaled some 14 billion euros, more than doubling the revenues generated in 2017. Member states spent or plan to spend close to 70% of these revenues on advancing climate and energy objectives, well above the 50% required in the legislation. About the environmental impacts, we can say that the last carbon market report shows that in 2018, emissions from installations covered by the EU ETS decreased by 4.1%, or about 73 million tons CO2 equivalents, from 2017. As in previous years, the decrease was mainly driven by the power sector, while emissions from industry decreased only slightly. Verified emissions from aviation, however, continued to grow, increasing by 3.9%, or about 2.6 million tons CO2 equivalents, compared to 2017. But, How does the European Union emission trading system? To answer the question, we must explain two important concepts. The emission trading system is a cap-and-trade system, which works by capping overall GHG emissions of all participants in the system. The European Union emission trading system legislation creates allowances which are essentially rights to emit GHG emissions equivalent to the global warming potential of 1 ton of CO2 equivalent, TCO2e. The level of the cap determines the number of allowances available in the whole system. The cap is designed to decrease annually from 2013, reducing the number of allowances available to businesses covered by the EU ETS by 1.74% per year. This allows companies to slowly adjust to meeting the increasingly ambitious overall target for emissions reductions. Each year, a proportion of the allowances are given to certain participants for free. For example, in sectors where there is considered to be a potential risk, if they pay the full cost of all the pollution allowances they need. That production, and pollution, could shift to countries with less ambitious emissions reduction action, addressing the risk of carbon leakage, while the rest are sold, mostly through auctions. At the end of a year, the participants must return an allowance for every ton of dioxide of carbon they emit during that year. If a participant has insufficient allowances, then it must either take measures to reduce its emissions or buy more allowances on the market. Participants can acquire allowances at auction, or from each other. Across a graphic example, we can understand the functional mechanism of the emission trading system. In this example, Factory B does not have enough free allowances to cover its emissions, so it can either comply with the cap by buying allowances from Factory A or from the auction. If a participant's emissions of GHGs exceed the free allowances they were given at the start of the year, they can buy allowances from auctions or from other participants who have reduced their emissions and hold surplus allowances. Participants can also decide to bank allowances for use in later years. The current state of the project is immersed in the Phase 4 with temporal horizon between the years 2021 and 2030. To achieve the European Union's overall greenhouse gas emissions reduction target for 2030, the sectors covered by the EU emissions trading system must reduce their emissions by 43% compared to 2005 levels, as we had the opportunity to say before. The purpose European Union Emission Trading System Directive will be achieved through a mix of interlinked measures mentioned before, such as strengthening the EU ETS for the next decade, better targeted carbon leakage rules, funding low-carbon innovation and energy sector modernization, inclusive consultant phase with different stakeholders. There is very important to understand the actual funding mechanisms implementing in the current stage of the project. From European Union emission trading system, there are implementing several low-carbon funding mechanisms will be set up to help energy-intensive industrial sectors and the power sector meet the innovation and investment challenges of the transition to a low-carbon economy. These new mechanisms include two new funds. The Innovation Fund, such as financial mechanism to support the demonstration of innovative technologies and breakthrough innovation in industry, with a market value of at least 450 million emission allowances. And finally, the modernization, such as financial mechanism to support the investment in modernization the power sector and wider energy systems, boosting energy efficiency to facilitate a just transition in carbon-dependent regions in 10 lower-income member states. One of the target to achieve by EU ETS directive for the next years will be to modernize the energy sector in lower-income member state, and the purpose of the low-carbon funding will be to minimize the breach opened between different regions and state members of the European Union. The Circular Economy Club as global non-government organization is focused in the development of initiatives related with the transition toward the circular economy model, through three main working lines: reduction and better waste management, regeneration of natural spaces in urban and rural nucleus, joined to rethink and to redesign products or services in order to make longer their life cycles. The local action group of Guadalajara of the Circular Economy Club engage with the aims of European Climate Pact and the EU Green Deal, considering that we can be an active stakeholder to be in count in the definition and implementation of initiatives related with the achievement of global targets related with the net zero GHG emissions by 2050. But we define our initiatives attending to a regional and local criteria, understanding that it's possible the development of local and regional mechanisms plenty aligned with the global targets of the European Union. We must consider an important aspect, the target of zero emission, through the equilibrium between greenhouse gas emissions and the capability to absorb by natural spaces by two possible ways: reduction of emissions, increasing the mix of renewable energies and improving the energy efficiency in our activity and production processes. Increasing the capability of the absorption, increasing and improving the regeneration of natural spaces. And also, across the creation of other more technical solutions related with the research and innovation projects to maximize the capability absorption of greenhouse gas emissions. Joined to environmental problem of the global warming, there are other problems related with the breach opened between rural zones, with highest absorption capabilities of emissions, and urban zones, the main focus of the emissions. These aspects must be in count when we are talking about the distribution of the revenues generated from auctioning of allowances. The use of financial funds is an important aspect that we consider it's possible to improve. The actual modernization fund is destined to countries with less of 60% gross domestic product per capita, but we consider that all kind of financial fund mechanism, in concrete the funds related with the modernization of energetic systems, must be aligned with the local and regional needs. Before, we had the opportunity to explain our position about the important differences of territorial cohesion in different regions of European Union in aspects of economic development, with geographical social economic breach between the rural world and the biggest cities. The finding of regional cohesion mechanism through the different funds must be a complementary target with any kind of action plan developed for the EU about environment protection. There are some important challenges to be solved by the emission trading system. Aspects such as the difficult to determine the right price to obtain the cut in emissions required without under or overcharging companies. We believe, thinking in local key, that the creation of local and regional emission trading systems could be a part of the solution. Understanding these mechanisms as systems with the infrastructure needed to monitor, to control and to verify the emission generated of GHG, to obtain the cut in emissions required without undercharging or overcharging companies. A traditional command and control approach may mandate a standard limit per installation, but provides little flexibility to companies as to where or how emissions reductions take place. The creation of innovative initiatives related with the involving of local and regional enterprises in projects and programs with private funding to regenerate natural spaces. The actual system allows trading of emission allowances so that the total emissions of the installations and aircraft operators stays within the cap, and the least cost measures can be taken up to reduce emissions. See benefits of cap and trade. Also, the pace of annual reductions, with targets in short term, could be more reasonably for us. Understanding obviously, that now the system trading emissions develops yet a monitoring and reporting control in order to check of the annual compliance cycle by the correct way until the moment. 10 years could be a lot of time, and as we had the opportunity to check recently, there are a lot of disruption cases that if could affect to the development of a roadmap with negative impacts to achieve concrete targets, as the reduction of 43% emissions in 10 years. Finally, we would like to mention one more time about the definition of how to achieve the targets, as the investment local stimulation in clean technologies in order to achieve better energy efficiency results in their production process. Our proposal recover the creation of new financial funds, more specifics to the funding of initiatives related with energy efficiency in the industrial sector or the building construction sector, and the funding of rehabilitation of buildings, that actually is starting to develop in different members states in the European Union. This is the main streams that we consider is possible to improve in the public consultation, but we are open to other suggestion to make more richest our proposal.